Hey everyone, welcome back. I have recently built a new PC around the Ryzen 7 2700X that I pulled from my main PC, and I've made it into a dedicated Linux gaming PC. In terms of specs, the motherboard is an Asus Prime A320M, 16GB DDR4 Corsair Vengeance, clocked at 2666MHz, 500GB M.2 SSD, and a Radeon RX6400. So obviously this build has been very budget focused, but at least there's plenty of room for upgrades in the future, should I wish to do so. In fact, during the making of this video, I already acquired an RX6600. So why Linux? I've been fascinated with Linux for quite some time and would love to ditch Windows on my main gaming PC. Unfortunately, that just isn't feasible at the moment, so building a dedicated rig is the next best thing. The distro I've opted for is Pop! OS, as I've heard good things about it, and is apparently a popular choice for gaming PCs. I'm going to test a variety of games, old and new, but only those that don't have native Linux support. I'll be using the Proton experimental compatibility layer for all games and playing them in 1080p resolution. The main purpose of this video is to see how well certain games will run in Linux, but it would also be a good opportunity to see how well this compact entry-level RX6400 runs with more demanding titles. To monitor frame rate, CPU and GPU usage, I'm using Mango HUD, which is essentially Afterburner for Linux, though without the overclocking features. We're starting with Doom Eternal at low settings. Being a well-optimised game, it's no surprise we're getting exceptional frame rates, ranging between 90 and 100 FPS consistently. Control, low settings, we're getting around 60 FPS on average. Although the RX6400 is being maxed out, even with these settings, it's barely breaking a sweat, with temperatures reaching no higher than 50 Celsius.
Tutorial override is right there, in the control room. How do we get there?
Wreckfest, low settings, the frame rates are in the 30s when there's loads of cars on screen, but once it clears up, we see highs of 100 FPS. Again, the RX6400 maintains a good temperature despite being maxed out. The Witcher 3 with next gen patch, at lower settings and FSR set to quality, we're seeing an average of around 50 FPS while passing through this village.
Anyone want to go and jump in puddles?
Fallout 4 high settings. During this battle with some feral ghouls, the frame rate is a little all over the place, depending on how much is going on around the player character, but we're probably averaging around 50 FPS. The original version of Skyrim at ultra settings and capped at 60 FPS, no issues here at all. Darksiders Warmastered Edition is a remaster of the 2010 hack and slash released in 2016. We're running this with high textures, not sure if this game has an FPS cap, but we're getting a consistent 124 FPS. Now onto some games outside of Steam. Here is the in-game benchmark for Cyberpunk 2077, the GOG version, using the Lutris launcher. Running at low settings and FSR set to auto, to my surprise, we averaged 71 FPS. Grim Dawn, GOG version in Lutris, with very high settings, no issues here, we're averaging 134 frames per second. Thought I'd try a couple of older games. Here's Gothic, GOG version, set to 1080p with high quality settings. For some reason I couldn't get this running through Lutris, so I used the Heroic Games launcher instead. Mango HUD isn't working for some reason, but safe to say this game runs just fine. The original version of Crysis, GOG version in Lutris, with very high settings. We're only getting an average of around 70 FPS, but it's no surprise that Crysis isn't a very well optimised game, even in 2023.
Shit, they've called in reinforcements. Enemy units headed your way. The LZ is overrun. Psycho and I are moving to the signal location. Nomad, there's a checkpoint.
And finally, a game from the Epic Game Store using Heroic Game Launcher that I could actually get to work, Death Stranding, at very high settings. While stumbling about this section at the start of the game, we averaged around 50 FPS. Well, my expectations were surpassed with the games I managed to get working in Linux. Of course, there were several games I tried that just wouldn't launch at all, particularly those in the Epic Game Store or from GOG. But then, in a few cases, if they didn't work in Lutris, they would work in Heroic Games Launcher or vice versa. A good website to check out to see how well Windows games would work in Linux is protondb.com, where users can note the methods used to get games working, if required, though bear in mind a lot of the entries there are for the Steam Deck. So would I recommend making the switch to Linux as a gamer? Well, it all depends. It seems the popularity of the Steam Deck has accelerated Linux support for many games, though that's just for games available on Steam. With GOG, there are many games that have native Linux support, but Windows games can be hit or miss. With Epic, you may be able to run your games through Heroic Games Launcher or Lutris, and with EA, just don't bother. And there's zero chance if you use Xbox Game Pass or own any games from the Microsoft Store, unless you use the cloud gaming facility. So my plans for this new build is to continue using Linux on it. I'll be capturing from it on my Twitch streams with more modern games, and I will investigate my options for day-to-day usage in the hope that one day I can ditch Windows on my daily driver for good. So that's all for this video. Feel free to leave a like if you've enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and let me know your thoughts on Linux gaming in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.